Hi, Stuart. Thanks for coming on today, mate.
No problem. Hi, Steve. How's things in lockdown?
Yeah. It's amazing because it's like things go fast but terribly slow, and it's a bit of a paradox. And I find that it's a bit like in between Christmas and New Year, like time sort of is this weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I've incredibly busy days somehow still though, without doing much work. Well, I'm doing loads of work, but late yesterday I was literally flat out from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed.
Yeah, it's
with
weird.
Working, helping the kids in the garden, etc., etc.
Yeah. But, thanks for coming on and, giving us a little bit of info in advance. And, so what I wanted to sort of get on to before we start is how was the 2020, going for Mitchell's Potatoes before this pandemic landed?
Okay. Demand was probably a little bit below where we were hoping it would be, but it wasn't a disaster by any means. But then really, I think last week in Feb, we usually see an uptick in sales traditionally. And this year we saw a downtick. And then first couple of weeks of March, disaster, not great. And then the last week before the lockdown was absolutely crazy, really, really busy, a week in December. And then last week was a disaster.
Do you think people's mentality slightly before the lockdown was we're staying open for this? We need as much stock as possible.
Yeah, I think certainly with fish and chip shops that was the case. We do quite a lot with wholesalers, and I think what was happening was consumers were going to supermarkets, weren't able to buy potatoes, etc., and they were thinking, right, let's stock up on carbohydrates. So let's buy a big bag of rice, a big bag of potatoes, and a big bag of pasta, and so because of that, they were going into wholesalers. So this was Book of Macro, and they were just clearing the shelves out there. So that really helped increase our sales. But fish and chip shops, I don't know. They weren't crazy. They were just, I think they were all tentatively ordering normal amounts.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think what were your first thoughts going into this sort of you could see the country's coming into a bit of a lockdown, everyone's sort of going into self-isolation. What do you guys do as a company to try and sort of steady the ship, let's say?
I think initially we felt like we'd probably be quite busy. We thought the takeaways would continue to stay open, and with pubs and restaurants closing, we thought fish and chip shops would do really well, actually. Especially with the delivery side of things. And this was, so I think I was sitting there on whatever the date was, the Friday before the lockdown, on the Monday, thinking, we're probably going to do quite well out of this. Or not quite well, but we're going to do okay and we're going to survive. And then I woke up with a horrible knot in my stomach on the Monday morning, thinking perhaps I was a little bit ambitious. Monday night, the Prime Minister made his announcement, and literally my phone just went absolutely crazy. WhatsApp messages, text messages, phone calls. It's the same in the office. Everyone cancelling their orders for the next day, and asking if we could uplift stock, etc. And then over a sort of 3-day period, we kept on operating. And cleared as much stock as we could. But it was, initially we thought things would be okay.
I think in some ways everyone in this situation has been a little bit enterprising because they've had to be. You guys have sold potatoes to end users. I've seen fish and chip shops selling potatoes to end users. Everyone's got a sack of potatoes in their house at the moment.
Which is great, as long as they make sure they eat them all up and they have to come back and buy some more.
I did see someone say on the group the other day, on one of the Facebook groups, what should I do with all my old potatoes? And I thought you should probably plant them. But no, I think generally, how long would the sack of potatoes last in that environment, in a normal environment? Would they not be all right for a few weeks or?
They should be. I think if they're sort of stacked up in the back of their shops, all stuck together, they're probably going to last maybe 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
If they sort of stand them on their ends and separate them all so air circulates around
Yeah.
them and they can be kept cooler, they might last up to 6 weeks. So people
Oh,
who've
okay.
got stock sitting in the back of their takeaways or restaurants, they may be able to use them when they reopen.
Yeah.
Well, depending on when they reopen, obviously.
Of course. And how long? Did you guys officially close? Did you carry on? What's the score there?
We sort of officially closed last Thursday, but when I say closed, the office is closed. Unfortunately, we've had to furlough all of our staff apart from one. We've got some sort of limited companies that do work for us, and they're coming in to do some driving work for us. But yeah, so the office is closed apart from one member of the staff and the three directors. And we're delivering. We are actually doing deliveries. We're sending 2 vehicles out a day to deliver to fish and chip shops, 2 to 3 at the moment. But that's sort of 10%. Usually we'd send about 30 vehicles out a day.
Wow.
So it's a massive difference, but it is helping to pay some bills. But it's obviously not much fun at the moment.
And obviously, we made jokes earlier about everyone with potatoes, but you did have to think on your feet because where fish and chip shops would, let's say, have a surplus of 30 bags sitting there, you guys had probably how many tons in a warehouse?
Yeah, well, I think it was the 18th of March. I think the penny dropped, and we suddenly thought, okay, we are actually going to hit a lockdown now.
Yeah.
And we had 1,000 ton
Wow.
on stock, which is a lot of. If you do the maths and work out how much a ton of potatoes costs, it's a lot of money. But we just stopped buying. But we've still got some of that stock left, but there's still demand. But we think that stock will clear this week, and we'll probably be starting to restock towards the end of next week, middle of next week.
That's good. So, are you seeing are you sort of like early reports of shops reopening?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we're speaking to our customers all the time, trying to, speak to the suppliers as well, so everyone knows what's going on. But there's certainly a few that are inquiring about when we could deliver and wanting to reopen, and then there's some that have stayed open, so have restocked this week, and they're taking 2 weeks worth at a time. So rather than having 50 sacks, they'll be having 100 sacks of potatoes, which makes it a bit easier for us because we're having to sort of piece together lorry loads of potatoes. So it's working okay. But yeah, there's definitely. I think we'll see more shops reopen next week, and I think personally, I think we'll just see a slow trend of shops each week, more and more reopening. But obviously, that depends on the news coming out of the NHS and the number of COVID-19 cases, etc.
And do you think they're probably reopening because of financial reasons, boredom, just a whole host of different things? Or
exactly, it's just a combination, isn't it? But and I think some people's staff would need the money for whatever reason, and so they're saying they want to work. I don't know how this furloughing works for sort of self-employed, independent small businesses. So. Yeah, I think it's a number of reasons why they want to open. Boredom might be one of them. I think a few people are scared of reopening because they're worried about a negative comment on Facebook or Twitter.
Social pressures.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I think people who are staying open, I think they're putting offerings in for NHS employees, whether it's free food or 50% off or some kind of discounts, and I think that's a good thing to do. And I think you're always going to get some social pressure or bad press from whatever you do. But I think my wife was listening to Heart FM on Saturday morning, and there were a few people coming on going, "Oh, I missed my fish and chip supper on a Friday," etc., etc. And then my friends were contacting me yesterday saying, "Which fish and chip shops do you know if there's any fish and chip shops open in the area?" and stuff like that. So there is a demand for it. I think we will see a gradual reopening.
What's your sort of biggest fear if this sort of lockdown, even if it sort of ebbs and flows a little bit, if it lasts 6 months, what's your biggest fear from like your side, the potato side?
I think my biggest fear would be being in business at the end of it, Steve. 6 months is it's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it depends how the industry changes. I feel that the restaurant side will struggle to get going again, and that I don't think that really that 2020 is going to be a very difficult time all the way through. I don't know if you agree with me.
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
For restaurants especially, because I think restaurants are going to be seen as a treat. Yeah.
Yeah, and a cautious treat as well. Some people won't care, but some people will. They'll be wary about going to a restaurant, won't they? And then I think restaurants are going to have to. They're going to have to reduce their covers, aren't they, to make it a more spacious area?
Yeah.
So they're naturally going to be doing less business. And I think takeaways, as and when the lockdown is lifted, that people are going to be going stir crazy from being stuck at home. And I think takeaways will be very busy.
Yeah, and I think fish and chip shops especially will recoup some of those losses. I think, yeah.
They have an opportunity here, don't they? They have an opportunity to gain some customers back while the big boys are all closed, the ones who have been taking their market share over the last 20 years. So they do have an opportunity to gain some customers back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can understand why they're closed. Everyone's got families and they've got responsibility to their staff as well and their customers. So if they are open or they're going to reopen, they've got to work out how to do it within a sort of a safe environment for everyone concerned.
Yeah, and how do you I'm seeing a bit of concern on the fish and chip groups and about sort of potato prices, and how are you sort of seeing this play out? Yeah.
Good question. I don't think it's not the same as the fish market, but I two ways. I think some of the stuff that the inferior stocks, which aren't quite so good and that people don't really want to use, I think value will drop on those. But everyone's going to be wanting to sell the right quality chip, and therefore they're going to probably want to buy the top end. And I think values will be around the same kind of level. I'd be surprised if they're higher. They may be. They may be a little bit lower. But I think short term, they'll probably be the same. Going into next season, which is sort of July, August, September, into the new crop, it's very difficult to call it, actually. It's weather dependent. They're planting now. They're probably planting on time. The weather's a little bit cold, so that will have an effect. I think long term, it's very difficult to say. You could still have expensive spuds like they've had for the last 2 years for the next 12 months, with maybe a gap in the summer where prices drop naturally. Some growers, we've had a grower this week, very big farmer in Cambridgeshire, come on saying he's not going to plant 500 acres of chipping potatoes for the market because he doesn't think the demand will be there because of COVID-19, etc. And so 500 acres, and that's just one grower. That's 500 acres is 10,000 tonne. So that's 400,000 bags.
Wow.
Of spuds, not to be so to put it in perspective. So that could put upward pressure on the market. I'm not saying every farm's going to do that. So It's the usual story. There's a load of factors involved, and I think we'll just have to wait and see. But the weather is always going to be the main factor in what prices do. If we have a bad start to the growing season for the new crop, prices will remain firm.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that if farmers have took a hit or had some wastage, or they're going to want to be recompensed in some way, and I think that it's not worth it for them, is it?
Yeah, well, the problem is the market decides itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a free market, and so if there's an oversupply of a certain product, then prices will come down. Because the fish and chip shops want such a good quality potato, that will be in limited supply. Yeah. That's why I think prices will be fairly stagnant.
Yeah.
But I don't see them going absolutely crazy in the sort of May, June, July period. I think at best they'll stay where they are.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. Well, Stuart, I think we've covered most things, and I think I'll let you crack on and get back onto your family and
thank you.
Trying to run the business as a 3-man show, or actually a 4-man show. So
Yes.
yeah, and thank you for your time.
No problem at all. Nice to speak to you, Steve.